Yes, couldn't get off mute fast enough. Thank you all so much for having me, and I am so excited to be joining these lovely ladies on the stage as well. My name is Glenice Kennard Moore, and I am the founder of Taboo Tech and the creator of the VDOM. The VDOM is an app-connected prosthetic genital device that can go from flaccid to erect at the push of a button. And it is basically a smart penis that kicks all the traditional strap-ons out of the water. So, yes.
The next. So I'm Norma Buster. I am a sex positive victims' rights advocate. I'm the director of client relations at CA Goldberg, which is a law firm in Brooklyn. And we help victims of sexual assault, stalking, blackmail, and other tech facilitated abuse. And we represent people in California, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and really all over the world.
Hello, everyone. I'm SX Nora. Excuse me. I'm just getting over a slight little, I don't know, this weather's changing. And now I have like a little stuffy nose and a little cold throat. I'm like, what's going on? And it's funny because it's like, it's not COVID. You know what I mean? Like we're over the COVID part, but we're like still afraid to be sick.
I was sick last week and it wasn't COVID.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh my God. And I am in my apartment off of Essex Street. So I do apologize if it's a little bit loud, but that's the New York life, honey. So we're actually all in New York. That's really cool. Stephanie, are you in New York?
Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn.
You're in Brooklyn. Fantastic. I love that. So I'm SX Noir. I am the thought leader of sex technology. I've been in the game since 2018. I've been published in many my brain's a little fuzzy. I'm sorry. I've been published in many things. I've spoken at many things, but essentially I navigate the intersection of sex and technology. And I have a background of activism within sex work. My main passion is understanding how empathy can navigate in digital space to create intimacy. So that's my thing. And if I seem a little familiar with y'all today, I'm here with Norma and Glenice, two of my favorite people. We've worked well together several times, so we may just be kicking just a little bit during this. So beware.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. So let's start off with a simple question. What is sex tech? Sex tech. Sorry.
Yeah, I can definitely jump into it. So sex tech is what I like to say is basically the intersection of technology and and sex. Pretty much at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's creating, it is activism, it is all of those beautiful things that is related to, you know, advancing the world of sex and sexual health and wellness.
Yeah, I would add I think it encompasses the sex work industry as well as sex education and people who are working in sexual wellness. You know, we see that there's less of a divide now between the online and the offline. So sex tech encompasses it's like how are we expressing our sexuality and learning about sexuality using tech.
Yeah. So how I would define sex tech is pretty much echoing my two comrades here that sex tech is any technology that enhances the human experience of sexuality. And so when we talk about it that way, people go, wait, what? And it's like, yes, exactly. So that dick pic you sent, you know, that swipe you did, that tracking your period, you know, all of those things incorporate sex technology, and it is quite expansive. So I like to use the language sex and culture technology because I think that helps people understand a little bit more that culture really does impact how we navigate sex and or technology. And so, yeah, you know, sex tech is something that we touch every single day and people are completely unaware of it. And as I have Glenice and Norma here today, I have a engineer and I also have a victims' right advocate, and then you also have me, which I don't even know how I got here. How'd y'all find me? Talking about sex and tech. So it's pretty expansive, and we have to have a really open mind when we think about what sex technology is and taboo tech as a whole.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So sex tech is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's continuing to boom. So can you tell us why you think it's still stigmatized as taboo?
Not us all laughing.
Yeah, I mean, where to start? Well, sex work is the oldest profession, right? So we've always had a sex industry. But it's been stigmatized because who are the people that are creating the laws around our bodies and who are creating the biggest tech platforms and legislating those? It's not marginalized groups. It's like the straight white men. And a lot of this comes from religious fundamentalism, but that's from the right and the left, where sex is such a stigmatized topic. And from my perspective, I have met with thousands of victims of tech facilitated abuse, a lot of it involving intimate partner violence. And sorry, I just like lost my train of thought a little bit. But but I say that to say that like the stigmatization of sex, it really just shuts survivors, victims into silence. And that's like that's the goal of sex and tech facilitated abuse, is to silence the victim. And so I think that stigmatizing these topics, as long as it continues to be stigmatized, we keep the people who are abusing in power, and we don't allow survivors to speak up. So I think that that's a big part of it. And I think for me, why these conversations are so important.
I'd like to add that just one thing that I found is that it's stigmatized and it's taboo because the people who are making the rules are the people with the biggest secrets. So like that's why it's still taboo. I mean, 99% of us got here by sex, so why is it even a secret topic? But it's because, like, Norma said, it's because, the people who are making the rules, people who are, legislative bodies and who are representing the people are the people with the biggest secrets. So why would you not make it, taboo and stigmatize it? And like you said, it's keeping victims silent. It is controlling the narrative around sex and what we know can expand from a business perspective, from a cultural perspective, from a community perspective. So that's, again, everyone from that group of people. I'm not going to call anybody out specifically, but that group of people is trying to control the narrative, and how best to do it by stigmatizing and making something taboo.
Yeah, first of all, Stephanie, this panel today, let me just tell you right now, this panel today could launch 1,000 ships. Like, let me tell you right now, everyone in this room is fantastic. And so I like to approach it from a perspective, emotional, social, and financial perspective of why we have social taboos around sexuality. And the reality is that sex hasn't caught up with tech, and tech hasn't caught up with sex. We still have this major disconnect socially between how we relate to sexuality. And so, as we know, sexuality can be many things. It can be reproduction, it can be our own pleasure, it can be entertainment, it can be art, it can be culture, it can be business, it can be innovation, it can be all of these things. And the reason why sex, we all know the reason why. We all know the reason why. Handmaid's Tale, everything, Q and every social thing that we've ever understood of as to why. But the reason why us three are on this stage right now is because we understand why, and it does not faze us, and we continue to push past why there's shame and stigma attached. Fine, I'll get into it. I'm a sex worker activist. I organized the largest sex worker march in history. And so I know a few things around shame. I know a few things around taboo. I marched in Times Square saying blowjob is a job. So we get it. We get it. And we get that those are the baseline of what our innovation is stood on, which is sex technology, right? But, I'll say that there's a lot of shame and stigma, but we're fighting it every day. I get a little nervous because we're very polarized in digital spaces. So what I do people ask like, SX, what do you do? And sometimes I'm like, I have no idea what I do, but I host events and I bring people together, and I don't allow cell phones, and I don't allow tweeting and Instagramming or any of that shit during my events. And you know why? Because I think that part of destigmatizing and demystifying our industry is bringing people together in real life spaces to have these difficult conversations. I want you to ask that question that you're like, I don't know if this is appropriate or not. I want you to ask that question that you've thought about, but you've been too ashamed to bring up. And that's something that I feel I bring to this space. And that's why I'm here. But yeah, I echo everything everyone else said. And I think there'll always be some shame around sex, unfortunately. Like, I know you all watched Human Resources on Netflix. If you haven't, please go check it out. We all have some shame, but what we're hoping to fight is the stigma around sex.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. That was amazing. So I want to go around to each of you and ask, what are some misconceptions that you hear about sex tech?
I could definitely jump in. Some of the misconceptions that I hear a lot is that sex tech is one thing. We've all expressed here that it can be so many different things. It's a colorful thing. That's the first part of it. And that, you know, if technology has to be one thing, which we know that technology is so many different things in our world alone, but add that to sex, and then we're talking about a, you know, whole nother multitude of, you know, things. So one of the misconceptions for sure is like, especially like if I go into a room with a potential investor and they're just like, but how is this tech? And I'm like, what do you mean? Because we have technology that's controlling our products. We have, you know, technology that is connecting people in a community around our product. So that's why it's technology. So I think that the biggest misconception that I see is that individuals sometimes think that sex tech is just one thing when it's not. It's a multitude of things, which was already expressed by the panel. But that's one of the biggest things I've seen so far.
I will say one thing that comes to mind is this idea that anything sex related is unethical. And I think that comes down to stigmatization, but also like we look at these major mainstream porn companies that are tech companies, right? And like at the end of the day, like MindGeek and all of that, like they're all tech companies. And I think that some of the practices that we see that are going on in all of big tech get really highlighted in the sex industry. And it becomes like a bigger message about how anything sex related is unethical. There are so many porn companies and platforms that are like sex focused that are created mostly by marginalized groups. Like it's not the people in power. It's not these big tech guys that are creating things ethically. And there's so much potential, like billions of dollars in potential in this industry if we just give money to the people who are creating products with user experience and safety in mind.
So to reiterate the question, you said, what are the most...
What are some misconceptions that you've heard about sex tech?
Yeah, so I'd echo everything that my comrade said before, but I also would say just on a personal level, like as a personal entrepreneur person in the space, people just assume that it's a no-brainer. People go, oh my God, what you're doing is so fantastic. How has everyone not supported you? And it's like, let me give you all the reasons why, right? So it's kind of this idea of this knee-jerk reaction, and Cindy Gallup talks about this knee-jerk reaction of, oh, I'm a customer, but I'm not an investor. And so that's something that we face all the time. And I think we spoke on that. And also just on a personal level, everyone thinks, oh, it's such a cool industry. You're in such a cool space. Like, oh my God, you're so edgy. You're so avant-garde. And it's like, I'm not. Actually, my industry is super, like, it's actually not niche. Bumble, Tinder, and all these other companies that we see here all the time. And also the fact that on a personal level, you know, people assume that They can have personal access to you and your wants and your needs. And this is something that I'm navigating now with my podcast out at Sex Noir. Glenise was on my podcast before. Shout out to Thought Leader Pod. And I'm going to have Norma on the next. But this idea that because I work in the sex industry or because I work in sex tech, forget me mentioning I'm a sex worker activist. People want to put their traumas on you. They want to share their life story with you. And there's a difference between, for example, developing a product like Glenise is doing, or taking intake form for a law firm like Norma's doing, or being a podcast host like what I'm doing. Of course, we care about the stories. We care about what people have to say. And that's what gives us our secret sauce, our bread and butter. But we don't want to hear about it all. Boundaries. I don't want to hear about it all. So I think that's the biggest misconception, is this idea that we're just harlots, nymphs out in the world, just everything, taking it all in. And the reality is that we go to bed next to our partners. You know, we go to dinner with our friends. We go to Thanksgiving with our families. You know, we are also people. And for me, I have a very outward persona that people feel very welcome to get comfortable with. But I think about all of my other comrades who just simply work for these companies, and they're kind of like, oh, I didn't really ask to be to talk about your partner's toy preference with you right now. And so, and on the flip end of that as well, I think people don't understand how unsafe we are in digital spaces and others. People don't understand that, like, we face a lot of violence. And it's not necessarily coming out and slapping you across the face. It's that email that you didn't want to get. It's that, oh, they swiped on field on me, and now because they know I'm SX Noir, they think that they can say something that I didn't ask for. It's kind of this this ongoing anxiety that we have that someone's going to disrespect us. And mind you, it's out of the 10 people who contact you, it's probably one or less. I really don't get that much bad things, but it's there. And I think that's something that we have to acknowledge, that entering this industry, entering taboo tech, welcomes violence toward you. And we don't really know how to mediate that right now in digital space because it's so new. And I'm going to stop talking now.
Yeah, no, I just want to add to that, like, because I totally agree with that too. And like, part of the reason why I feel like I love being in these spaces, and you know, I work with victims of abuse, and I see the horrors of tech every day, right? And of sex tech, of like these major dating apps. But I believe in a world where we can have safer tech, where we can have safer dating apps. I think that's important because I'm a survivor too. Like, I got into this work because I had an ex who stalked me for months and put my naked pictures on the internet. That's how I met my lawyer, Carrie Goldberg, who's now my boss. And for me, exploring and embracing my sexuality and getting on dating apps has been so important to my healing. And I don't want, like, I think that that's such an important part of this conversation. When, like, I talk about victims' rights, it's like, okay, our right to also to heal and to figure out like what works for us and what we need, especially when we're dealing with sex-related crimes, right? Like, having that agency is so important. And so that's why I love being in a space like this, like, where it's not like, how do I say this? Like, I'm Latina, and like, I grew up in a Cuban home, and sex was always really stigmatized, very Christian home. And it's really good to be in a place like this where I'm speaking with other people from my community, and we can talk about like, how do we change those conversations moving forward so that we can all have better, safer lives.
Absolutely love it. And you're so right. That adds a extra thought to me, is that one thing that annoys me about a misconception is that we get dropped into these buckets. Like, as soon as you say the word sex or genital or anything, you get dropped into this bucket of something that has to be just explicit automatically. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions that really just drive me crazy, because I'm creating a product that I want to be a lifestyle product for people. It's because someone wants to find a solution for a problem. It's not all about, just going out here and, sling a dick everywhere, excuse me. But I mean, if that's what you want to do,
First of all, I
fine.
would love to. First of all, I would sling B-Dom anywhere. I would sling B-Dom anywhere. Please take a moment and explain what your product is, because I don't think the listeners understand how revolutionary your product is. Because I would sling B-Dom. I'm sorry. When
And I
B-Dom
mean,
comes out, I'm a
sling it.
menace.
That's
I'm a
fine.
menace. I'm a menace.
And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
So
But
tell
at
us what
this,
it is, please.
but no, like seriously, let me to tell you what it is. Though honestly, it is a I like to call it, at this point in time, I call it a smart penis. Basically, it is a penis that can go from flaccid to erect. So, traditional strap ons, they do one thing, they have one job, right? But I wanted to create a product that made people feel whole, that actually did a job, but also at the same time was a solution, because not everybody can take medication to have an erection. Not everybody can have a gender reaffirming surgery. So what you tell these people that, oh, you only have one option, and not everybody can have spontaneous sex. There's some limitations. So I wanted to address all of those things with this product that says, okay, well, now I can have an on-demand erection anytime, anywhere. Now I can, fulfill my entire, sorry if you guys can hear that in the background. I am in my warehouse right now, so please forgive me. But I wanted people to have something that was comfortable, that was attached to their bodies, and that they felt whole, and that they can have an on-demand erection anytime they wanted to. And because of that reason, it's like I call this a lifestyle product. I don't sell my product at a sex store, not right now, anytime soon. But I don't have a problem with that. But at the same time, I wanted to be an option that is outside of, you have to go to a novelty store to find a product that is a solution for your entire human being. So that was my approach. And so because of that, it really bugs me when we get dropped into these buckets of, oh, you're just a sex toy and here we go, and you're explicit and children and stuff shouldn't see you. Well, what happens when you have someone that is, 16, 17-year old, and they're transitioning, and they are thinking that the only option that they have is to have, gender reaffirming surgery, when they may not necessarily be ready for that? Why do they not have options? So that was my thought process. But if we're getting put into these buckets of, you're just explicit, you're a sex toy, then that takes out a whole bunch of kids, not necessarily kids, but teenagers and people who are transitioning, and people who can't take medication, people who can't have these surgeries, people who can't afford these surgeries, people whose bodies are not, made for these surgeries. It just literally sets them to the side. And to me, that's just, one of the biggest misconceptions that I really bugs me to death, because you're limiting someone having a really viable option, and except for just what you feel like is the right thing. So that's just my spill on that, is being dropped into these buckets, being labeled a thing that I have not labeled myself.
Yeah, I just real quick,
You're
real
good. You're
quick.
good. You're good.
I'm such a fan of these two people I'm on a panel with, because I think these are the exact examples of what sex technology is. Truly, we're talking about a prosthetic company. We're not talking about some willy-nilly, vibrator out there that's produced in China. We're talking about a prosthetic company that could actually change lives. Like Schemo Tech isn't just, am I pronouncing that right? Schemo Tech isn't just for someone, which actually, yes, to get off. But this is a prosthetic company that can change lives around the world. And guess what? It started because someone wanted to fuck their girlfriend. And I love that. I love that innovation came from wanting to fuck your girlfriend. Like, that's exactly it. And so, this is something that is serious. Like, flaccid to erect. Tell me another company that is producing biotech that's going from flaccid to erect. Come on. Okay, I'm gonna let it go. But I'm just sorry. I get so geeked out. I'm just saying, like, can you imagine? Which, by the
Much
way, I need a
appreciated.
VDOM. I'm gonna DM y'all. I need a VDOM.
I'm gonna make sure you get one.
I'm gonna string from the rooftops about VDOM.
Appreciate you.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for sharing all of that. I think it's such like an important topic, and it's not talked about enough. So on this topic, right? So are there any areas of sex tech that has yet to be explored, or that you think that needs to be explored more?
I just think we need to start funding like sex tech creators. Like that's really like we need like venture capitalists and people with the money to start investing in products that are created by marginalized groups who are in the sex tech industry, from sexual wellness to sex work to sex education. I think that that's the biggest thing. And like I said, we have had tech that has been created and legislated, and this legislation enforced, not really enforced by like a certain group of people. And it's time to start putting the money into people who actually care about user experience. And we also need to challenge funders to ask about safety, like not put their money into products just because they can make money, right? Like that's like all these big tech companies' business model is just engagement, more and more money, and we need the people funding those products to actually like ask, what are you doing for user safety?
Yeah, I just echo that for sure. Going through the process of trying to fundraise, literally having the traction, the numbers, the everything that you ask for right here, I'm handing it to you and showing you the potential. And yet the answer is still, I don't know anything about that space. But I'm sure you didn't know about the iPhone when it was being created because it was created for the first time. So it's like you didn't know about that either. So I definitely echo that. It's like definitely funding needs to be a top priority at this point because it's ridiculous what we're having to go through out here.
Yeah. So absolutely funding. And we need to realize that the Black, queer, BIPOC market is huge. It is massive. I think that's my biggest problem is that it's not about like, I want to make money too. I want to make money too. We all want to make money, but have me in the room, have me at the table. And so one of the most controversial things I ever say is white people need to give up their seat. I'm not trying to sit at your table. I'm trying to make my own table or be at the table without you at the table. Okay. And that's a whole nother conversation, but I can say that because how do I pronounce it? Tequeritas? How do I say it? Stephanie, tell me.
Tequeria.
Tequeria. Okay. Listen, white people to the back. Okay. So that's one. And then two, we need to be allocating funds. Like something I've been experimenting with and navigating lately is the crypto NFT conversation. And so I'm working right now on a sex culture DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization, which essentially is a decentralized nonprofit. And one of our main goals is to fundraise. And the idea being is that we raise a fund and that everyone in the DAO in the membership gets to vote on where these funds are given. And the idea being that crypto, people donate more in crypto than they do in dollars. And the idea that this is a new and emerging way to fundraise for not only nonprofits, but a new way to fundraise for more taboo and stigmatized industries that normal banking discriminates against. So that's something that I've been in conversation with. I've been here and there on that conversation. So check back in with me in a month about how I feel about it. But that's what I've been really into. And also the future of Web3 within these conversations. So the future would be right now, everyone who got in on this event, they had to kind of log in, give their email, give their information, The future of Web3 is a bit more fluid when it comes to technology. And I'm wondering how that's going to impact taboo tech as a whole, sex tech as a whole. And so that's kind of what I'm paying attention to right now.
All right, so I love that you mentioned Web3. So can you tell us how Web3 and sex tech go hand in hand?
Who said Web3? Me? No. So I think Web3 and sex tech go hand in hand because the best use cases we're going to see of Web3 as far as it becoming mainstream is going to be with sex. period. Once we have these sex companies adopting it, whether it be from product, whether it be from just digital assets, from entertainment, we're going to see Web3 widely adopted. Web3 is simply the future of how we navigate technology. So how now you have to go in through your email, you have to have double
Authentication.
thank you. Thank you. You won't have to have that in the future of Web3. You won't have to have it. And so I am no expert. I am simply out there investigating for y'all. So when I find out all these things, I will be sharing them on my platform. And I actually have a guest coming on my podcast called Ayana the Oracle, and she is all about Web3, all about NFTs, and she is a baddie, and she's fantastic. I'll drop her info here. She has those answers for you.
Okay, perfect. I'm interested to learn more about that as well. So what do you all think that sex tech can do better to promote better opportunities for Latinx and BIPOC communities?
I keep going back to funding. Like, I just feel like we have people who are really talented and have the skills and ideas and are ready to put products out into the world, and they need funding. We need to give people a seat at the table. And I'm a little bit, I'm not sure exactly how, like, I don't know how to do that, but like, I just think the funding needs to go there.
I think more things like this. We need to keep continuously join together, meet up, talk, realize that there's so many of us out here. I think that that's the biggest key, is like continuously growing these platforms, creating these platforms. It's not just, one group or one person that needs to be the leader. We're all the leaders. So let's start to lead together and be more in the room with each other, and, have conversations and create spaces. I think that that's probably the biggest thing that I can think of. Just how sex tech is siloed, but it isn't. Of course, like, I know a lot of people in this industry, but at the same time, I think we need to talk a little bit more, meet a little bit more, build community a little bit more, and it will actually make our force way stronger. So, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. Funding. But if I had to really get into it, I think we need more transnational solidarity when it comes to conversations around sex and technology. I've done a lot of work with Asian and Black lives, and I think that we need more conversations of, like, obviously we have our Afro-Latinas, we are very paralleled in a lot of ways, but we're also very different in a lot of ways. And so I think that we need to be more in community and more in cahoots with each other, and crossing those lines of, like, how do we really relate together? So, Norma and I would consider her a friend of mine. Like, we are very aligned, but her Cuban background and my Black American background, we are completely different in some of the ways that we navigate it. So I think it's crossing those lines, understanding how we all are alike, and we are more alike than different. And I think that, something that is also refreshing is being able to talk about white people. And I'm sorry, but it's so refreshing to be in a room and be able to talk about some of these things that really impact us around the dominant culture that is white culture in America specifically. And so I think that it's such a freeing thing. And y'all both laughed when I said it, because it's true. It's absolutely true. And if you're someone in this room who is white, who is listening, absolutely, we love you. We care for you. Thanks for being here. But we do need our own spaces that can be transnational, that we can talk about some of these barriers of entry that we have. When we need to shy away from the golden minority. Okay. Like, if there's a Black person in the room, there's a Latina in the room, there's an Asian in the room, there's a Pacific Islander in the room, we go, okay, that's enough. It's not enough. We all need to be in that room, and we all need to understand the differences. And so that's what I would have to say around that. Oh, and if you're listening to this, stop plugging your own shit. This is about our conversation, okay? So if you're listening, either plug our stuff or don't. Period. Thank you.
Yes.
They can't say that, but I can.
I love that. So I want to go back to Glenise about your product. So, because sex tech is considered taboo, is it hard to commercialize your tech product? And do you have any tips for people who potentially want to create their own startup?
Um, yes, it was hard when that's what I was focused on. I originally came into this like I have a cool idea, but I need to, make a business out of it. So how do I do that? Oh, well, let's go Google, read books, and follow the direction that they tell us we should, which usually stirs from, old school Silicon Valley. When I was trying to follow that path, I was just running into brick walls left and right. I was banging my head against the wall. I was never literally, I was never, I was never able to really get into the club. And when I stopped focusing on that, I was like, wait a minute, what am I doing? I can literally create my own table and I can literally create my own space and I can create my own Silicon Valley if I start to work with what I know, what I have, and my resilience. And so when I stopped focusing on, the way to do things as a startup, and started focusing on what do I have? How can I make an airplane out of a brick? When I started looking at it from that perspective, instead of going to look at, Google books and all this type of stuff and the right way to do things, it actually made it easier for me. I don't, it's funny because it's like, yeah, I have a startup, but is this really a startup, or is this, a company, a business that is just literally trying to get a product out of the market? So I'm trying to articulate this right. But when I stopped focusing on what they say you should do, whoever they are, and I literally just focused on the business, focused on my why, things started happening a little bit better. I started raising more money from non-traditional spaces. I started, being able to source certain types of products instead of saying, oh, the pandemic hit and now all the parts are gone. Well, in the US, all the parts are gone because I'm looking only at the distributors because that's what they say I should supposed to look at. I started going directly to the manufacturers in China. So it's like, and when I stopped just focusing on what they say you're supposed to do and the direction that they say the path you're supposed to follow, and started creating my own avenue, things got a little bit easier for me. I hope I articulated that properly. But money started to come in, and parts started to be made more available. I started being able to get my hands on better resources and education and stuff like that that actually pertain to me reaching my goal, if that makes sense. So yeah, my thing is, don't focus on what they say you're supposed to. Literally focus on what works for you. I
I
hope that
love
came out right.
it. It did. It definitely did. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, Norma, your passion is to create a safer world for marginalized groups. Are you able to tell us more about what you're doing to hold individuals who weaponize tech accountable?
Yeah, so I've been at our firm, CA Goldberg, for about like 4.5 years now. And as I said, I've met with thousands of victims of different forms of sex and sex facilitated abuse. Um, and so we help people on an individual level if they're being targeted or attacked, whether it's being stalked by an ex or dealing with someone who's just hell bent on ruining their life. So we try to figure out what is the best path forward, whether it's in order of protection or advocating with law enforcement or whatever that may be. And that's something that our attorneys handle and help to figure out. I meet with people before they've become a client, and so we really delve down into what they're going through and what their priorities are going forward, because it's so individual and it's so personal in nature. So we can figure out like the best strategy. And then so we hold individuals accountable, right? We help get money for our clients when they've been wronged, and if there's an offender who has the money to pay them back. And we have this philosophy that like if someone hurts you, they must pay, however that is, whatever we can figure out. Working up against the limitations of our legal system, but it's on the individual level, but it's also on the big tech level. These companies like Meta and Snapchat and all the other big tech companies, they are responsible for the abuse that happens on their platform because they are willingly turning a blind eye to what's going on in their platform. Right now, we have this law, Section 230, which has been interpreted to give tech companies complete immunity from liability for third-party content. But what it's done is it has it's de-incentivized tech companies from trying to create safety mechanisms and to create a safer place for users. And so a lot of the lawsuits that we deal with at our firm, we're representing people who have dealt with extreme harms from tech companies where this could have been avoided. For example, we have a lawsuit against Amazon right now for selling a product that was used for suicide. I've spoken with like over a dozen parents now of people who have completed suicide by purchasing a product that they got through Amazon Prime. We also represent someone who was sextorted and sex trafficked through Omegle. When she was 11 years old, it started. And so we're seeing these instances where kids are being lured online by pedophiles with no mechanisms in place to prevent this from happening. When you have a company like Omegle that exists just to match strangers with no verifying of who they're matching, like you're welcoming pedophiles to match with children. And so it's a huge issue where kids are getting sextorted online and then it turns into a trafficking situation. And so like, I really love being in a space like this where we're talking about building tech products that help the world, right? We can create dating apps that have mechanisms in place to keep users safe. There's always risk involved in anything, right? And we're not saying that tech companies should be held responsible for every single thing that happens on it. But the point is that if they can prevent it, they've been notified of what's going on, then they have the responsibility to do something about it. And so we believe at our law firm in protest through litigation. And so we're trying to chip away at Section 230 so that we can make the internet a safer place.
Oh, were you going to say something, SX?
Oh, I was going to say, that's Bay. I don't know what else to say.
Yes, that was awesome. Thank you so much, Norma.
So awesome,
I think
Norma.
that you and your company do are so amazing. So I want to talk a little bit about what obstacles each of you have faced being in this industry. And we can start with SX.
Deep breath there. Yeah, what obstacles I face. So I arguably am one of the most of the sex tech conversations. I am one of the most stigmatized and oppressed voices within the industry as far as just speaking on sex worker rights issues. And that's a heavy thing to do, and a very privileged thing to do that I'm able to do it. Let's see. I'm no longer able to work in the traditional ways that I was before because I'm now a public figure. So I'm not able to make those millions that I was literally making before. And now I get pennies for being the righteous activist. So I'll just say that because we're in a private setting, or it's recorded, but whatever. I don't care. So you can no longer work. Once you become an activist, you can't work in traditional sex working places anymore. Once you become a public face, you cannot continue to go to the strip clubs and continue to escort and continue to do all those things. You can't do it anymore because now you're public. But the biggest thing that's happened to me is I have a stalker, and I've had a stalker for years now, and it sucks. And this person has very much used digital space as a way to intimidate me and bully and harass me. And it's difficult because they cyber stalked me back to the point where I was in high school. Like they posted a photo of me at my high school prom when I was like 17, you know what I mean? So it hurts, but it also is kind of like okay, I must be someone who is worth hurting. I must be doing something right if you want to like come after me in such a way. Um, that Essex Street, sorry y'all if you can hear it, but I think it's hindered it's hindered a lot of my personal relationships in some ways where it's like I have friends who work in television, or I have friends who work in fitness, or I have friends who work in these industries. Oh my God, it's so loud. Um, who they don't face the things that I face every day. They don't have to worry about someone stalking them. They don't have to worry about these different things that I have to worry about. And with partners, I have to explain, hey, by the way, this is what I talk about. This is what I do. And as a thought leader, I think that I talked about this in my podcast recently. I think I've been very censored in my leadership, that I wish I could be more open and honest. Like all my private friends, Norma, you've heard me say crazy things that I've never said publicly. And so it's because of fear of stalking. It's because of fear of someone retaliating against you. And, I will do it 10 times over. I don't care. I will continue to fight and I will continue to be who I am. And so, I think that there's been a lot of negative things that have happened because of what I do, but a lot of positive things as well. And my family is they don't understand. They're kind of like, what do you do exactly? But they're very supportive of me, and they're happy that I'm doing what I want to do and I'm achieving what I want to achieve. And I'm fighting for the people that I want to fight for. So they get that. But yeah, it's been very interesting. And I've endured a lot, which is actually something that I'm working on, an art project of like every horrible thing people have said about me and compiling it alongside my old working girl photos. And so I'm working on that right now. But yeah, I think every single day that we get up and we have these conversations, there's 35 people in the room right now, but every single day we talk about this, it impacts someone. So I hope someone in this room today takes something away that makes them braver, makes them stronger, and makes them have more courage. And so that's why I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so sorry about the stalker situation. Like,
listen,
people,
hotties, the bad girls have stalkers, okay? Hotties have stalkers. Isn't that right, Norma? Norma, like
Yes,
the hot
we
girls
all
have
do.
stalkers. Yes, if you're on it, you got a stalker, honey. That's what it is.
But as
My
a
biggest fan.
more,
My biggest fan. They don't even know, but they're my biggest fan. Like they've compiled so much about me over the last year, like an archive of my work and who I am. I'm almost proud of them.
Wow.
they almost like, yeah, they kind of put together a resume.
They kind of did. I was like, low key. I was like, oh my God, I actually did that. Like they'll pull some shit out from 2 years ago. And I'm like, wow, that's beautiful. I didn't even know. I forgot that photo existed. I'm joking, but I'm also kind of serious. It is scary, but
you have to joke about it though, right? So like
you have to joke about it. And thankfully, I've never been physically, other than some points early on, I've never been physically accosted or affronted with this kind of stuff. That's another story for another day. But digitally, like for a very long time, I didn't post anything that I was at in real time. Only things I did you had to be guest list only. You had to go through security to get to me. Only because I was getting threats of like SX shouldn't feel safe, and oh, SX is going here, and she shouldn't feel safe in this environment. And so I just kind of I have many harm reductions. One, I have people watching the account that my stalker stalks me from. And two, I always go with a friend. I never go anywhere by myself. And that lowers my anxiety so much. So there's more to that story. But yeah, having a stalker, like cyber stalking, in-person stalking, it is unfortunately a result of working in the sex industry.
yeah, and I will say, just like watching everything that as sex noir that you've gone through, like as a friend and like colleague, like we do events together, and we you're doing such important work. You created the largest sex worker march in history. Like I think we need to keep like saying that, because that's amazing. And it's like anytime you have people who are hell-bent on like taking that away from you, I think it just shows you're doing something right. Stephanie, to answer your question, like I can really relate to what SX Noir was saying. I mean, on a personal level, I talk a lot about my own healing and like how I've gotten through this. I just published a piece in Refinery 29 on non-monogamy after trauma and how it's been healing for me. And like I was looking at the Instagram of Refinery 29 today, and like I expected a lot of the comments that I saw, which were like just very clearly not understanding, and like from people who didn't read the article, right? Like you have people who say like, oh, she's just clearly brainwashed, or she's this or that, or and that's part of it. It's like the more we put ourselves out there, and it's for a purpose, right? Like I don't talk about these things because I want the world to know about my dating life. I talk about it because I think that it's important, and these are things that have been stigmatized historically. And thank you for linking that. But it's these are things that have been historically stigmatized, and especially speaking as a Latina. I mean, the first time I ever tweeted about dating couples, my parents called me saying that they were very concerned I was going to get a deadly STD. And so I'm like, okay, well, first of all, I'm not talking about this with you. But second of all, like, okay, let me send you a study on how non-monogamous couples actually tend to have lower levels of STIs and tend to be like safer. So I'm like, not really a conversation I want to have, but also like it does kind of open the door to educate like our family members who maybe are stuck in these old-fashioned ideals. So it's a balance of like self-preservation and also like wanting to just put my story and my life out there because it's freeing and I think it might help other people. But then a challenge like on our firm's level, I just want to mention. So that's like me individually, but as a firm, Carrie Goldberg, my boss, she started this firm because she had her own ex who was stalking her, and she couldn't find help as an attorney. Like going up against the judge, they told her she had a First Amendment problem. And so she started this firm because she couldn't find the help she needed. You can read about her story in her book, Nobody's Victim. That's the cover. But Nobody's Victim by Carrie Goldberg. But, you know, all of the cases that we take, the work that we do, it stems from need. It's all about the fact that, like, there's a tragedy or there's some kind of gap in our system and we got to fix it. And so sometimes it's been a challenge as a small firm going up against these big tech companies. In 2018, when I started here, no one was talking about Section 230, and now it's become such a huge topic. And so that, I think, has been a challenge at work with getting, you know, being taken seriously as like a small firm up against these tech giants.
I know, right? I will be very transparent. The biggest challenge for me has been mental health in terms of navigating this up and down wave roller coaster. It is a thing that I had no idea what I was walking into from a mental health perspective. You know, it's some days where I feel like, oh my gosh, I cannot do this. And then it's other days where it's like, you know, but no, you have all these emails of people saying, thank you for making this product. And it's like, you got to keep going. But it is a roller coaster. Entrepreneurship, you have so many things that you run into as a founder, building a product, building a business. Those things are just, you know, a part of the narrative. But it's the mental health part for me, keeping going when you're exhausted, when you're mentally and emotionally drained, and thinking and having imposter syndrome every 5 minutes, literally getting a Forbes magazine article and you're so happy at 12 o'clock. And then by 12:30, your engineer says, we just broke everything. We got to start over again. That is a lot to try to navigate and work through. And it takes a toll on your mental a lot. So I will say that's been the biggest obstacle and not necessarily an obstacle, but the biggest challenge for me for sure. And there's no blueprint. There is no blueprint. You know what I mean? There's no one size fits all. There's none of that stuff. So when you have that, it's like you're literally feeling around in the dark, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot on your mental health.
I think that's the thing. None of us are dealing with a blueprint here. Like, we're all kind of we're paving the path, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, and a lot of us, like, I mean, formally, I was formerly the president of Women of Sex Tech, which was an organization that brought women together to talk about this. And I think it's important to name the fact that we all are women identifying people in this room right now. And I think it's important to identify that I'm Black and Glenise is Black, and that we also have trans nationality here right now, right? I think this is really important to voice, because I hope that we reflect the people that are in this room. I really do.
All right, thank you all so much for sharing. Oh, sorry, Glenise, did you want to say something?
And I was just going to say, let's not forget the fact that we are all doing this thing and we are people of color. Like 100%, that adds on a whole nother mountain of shit. So just to add, like, keep that in
The
mind.
taboo part, yeah, we didn't even get into the racial part of being taboo.
Right.
You didn't
Like,
even get to the fact
seriously.
that we're non-white people talking about sex and how fucking crazy that is. We didn't even get into that. I didn't even touch that. That's a whole nother
So
panel.
just to add, I just had to say that. To add that to the mix, it puts on a whole nother mound of stuff. So
amazing. I'm gonna hop in actually, and I'm gonna say, hey everyone. We are literally just about at time, and so we covered all the questions, which is really amazing, and I love the responses. It's funny because obviously me and my team, we pieced together this event, so I'm making sure everything is good. So like I'm listening to you on this platform using my laptop, and then I have the other session, which is about Canatech on my phone, and I'm listening to.
You have sex and cannabis competing?
Well, I know. I was just, you know what? That's something, hey, for the future to know, because I did this and I was like, yeah, there's going to be like sessions at this time about Taboo Tech overall and Canatech. And then like now I'm thinking about it and I'm like, oh my God, both of these conversations are so good. And I was like, oh, why did I put it at the same time? But you know what? They're going to be recorded. They're going to be for everyone to view. And there's going to be plenty of more conversations coming up. Yeah, that was my bad. Sorry, guys. I know Kim said I thought the same thing. My fault. But going forward, I'm really excited that you are all able to join us. If you have questions in the chat, and shout out to Stephanie for moderating. Really appreciate you doing this for us. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We don't have time today, but what'll happen is I will be forwarding these questions to our panelists and hopefully get some responses within the next couple of weeks to curate and give to the community as feedback. And they will be partaking in our Slack community as well. I'm going to get them. Some of them are already on Slack, some of them are not. So I'm going to be adding them to our Slack channel so that you can connect with them off the grid or whatever, aside from this panel, aside from LinkedIn, different ways. Our Slack community is very safe. So again, thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Yes, drop those ads, get those follows up, whatever the case. And I really, really appreciate you all for joining this panel. It means the world to me, more than you know. I was very scared to bring up this topic to the team about even presenting because of the stigma that it has, but I'm really glad that we were able to.
You are right. You did it. You made it. We appreciate you.
Thank you. You made it happen. Appreciate you.
Okay.
Oh my God, stop. Words of affirmation is like one of my love languages.
Your love language is your king, girl. Don't be describing love languages as king. But I get you, girl. I feel you. Well, you're doing fantastic, baby girl.
Thank you. I appreciate it. My fiance is screwed. I said it's one of my love languages, but to be honest, all 5 love languages are my love languages.
That part.
I'm like, yeah, it's slow for you because I'm all of the above. But thank you again, everyone, for participating. And I think this session is open for another 3 or 4 minutes. If you want to stay, if you want to go, by all means. But I'm gonna hop on. I didn't realize you were in here.
I have like 5 minutes to answer a question, but if not, then yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple
sessions
minutes.
Also, just letting you know, I think at 3:35 it will cut off. Hopefully not.
You're going to get the question in quick then. I'd ask right now.
Awesome.
Thank you, darling.
Thank you.
Bye.
There actually is sorry, my dog. There actually is one question from Gerald.
I wish I had my dog. I wish my dog was barking in the background. I'm so sad.
But yeah, Geraldine says, What kind of tech companies have you worked with who align on your mission?
Mm.
For me, none. Not a one. No, honestly,
That
the way
is
that
funny.
honestly, the way
That's
that I got
funny.
into this was one, necessity. But then two, I'm a self-proclaimed tech nerd, and I was not qualified to do this at all, but I was determined to do it. So that was it for me. I work in information security, and I mean I do secure my users' information. But other than that, that's about it.
I'm
Yeah.
unfortunately for me, like for example, I was the head of an org that had many different parts in it. I've worked with phenomenal people across the board. I will say that most of them are female led. I will just say that female by POC led. There's Afterglow. There's VDOM, of course. There's Carrie Goldberg Law Firm, of course. Dame, I think Dame is great. I think Maud is great.
Yeah.
I think Laura DiCarlo is great. I think I mean, if you want to hit me up on a personal level, I can definitely give you like a little like tea on who I think is fantastic. But anyway, I have so much to say on that I actually probably can't say a lot, right?
Yeah.
I can be quiet.
It's hard for me to say like with what tech companies would align with our mission because for me, we talk a
I
lot
like
about big
field.
accountability, but
I like field. I get Norma's position a little bit more harder. I like
I like
field.
field, but
I like field.
I don't know. Like I also like could see where there's a lot of dangers to it. Like I think all these tech companies need to do better, and so
Yeah.
basically, I try to look at like who is the person leading this company, who is the one with the vision, and what are they doing for user safety. Like I ask, like if I go to an event and there's like a panel of people who are working for sex tech companies, I ask about user safety. So I just try to like ask those. It's hard to say specific companies, but you see who's thought about these things, who's actually like put it into like the creation of their product.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And our last minute here, follow all of us. Look at those links in the description or in the chat session. Follow my Substack because that's how I make monies. Okay. Follow my Substack. And follow everyone else here. We're getting cut off here in one little short minute.
Can I say something
will
really quick? Oh,
please.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were.
No, you didn't cut me off. I'm just trying to get in for the last. It's only 1 minute left.
I just want to say really quick. I literally read that question wrong. I have yet to work with other companies, but I have been supported by, and I have supported other companies. We haven't had that opportunity yet, but we have definitely been supporting each other. And I'm not going to run the list right now. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But that was an honest answer. But that was an honest answer. To be very clear,
I read that wrong.
Okay, y'all. 2 fingers.
All right. Thank you all so much. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the summit. And thank you all so much for our panelists. You all were amazing. Thank you so much for everything that you do. And I'll definitely be connecting with you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
And
bye.